Okay, wow. So let's get right into it. We're diving into some pretty intense political drama happening right now in the Philippines. We're talking about Vice President Sara Duterte and President Ferdinand Marcos Jr.
Yeah, you know the ones, the former running mates in that crazy 2022 election.
Right. And well, let's just say things have gotten, well, pretty dramatic between the two of them since then.
It's gone way beyond just like a little disagreement or anything like that.
Yeah.
We were just talking about accusations to corruption and this very, very public falling out. And now this latest thing, Duterte making this crazy statement.
She actually said she hired an assassin.
Yeah, and not just to go after anyone.
It's to target the president himself,
Marcos, yeah.
along with his wife, Liza Araneta, and even the House Speaker, Martin Romualdez.
Oh, and this is only if anything happens to her.
She literally said, quote, "If I'm killed, you'll kill BBM, Liza Araneta, and Martin Romualdez." No joke. No joke.
Whoa.
Strong words.
Yeah, and you know it's not just like some random comment she made.
It's gotten everyone freaking out.
Right, like the Presidential Security Command, they're taking this seriously.
Yeah, they've ramped up security around President Marcos and everything.
They're treating it like a real national security issue now.
I mean, yeah, you can definitely see why they'd be worried. But then here's where it gets even weirder.
Right.
Duterte later said, no, she wasn't making an actual threat.
She was just expressing, like, concern for her own safety.
What do you even make of that?
It's definitely a very tricky situation, especially from a legal standpoint, you know?
Right.
Because even just publicly making threats like that could get her in big trouble in the Philippines.
So basically, on top of this whole political firestorm, she could be facing legal trouble too.
Yeah, potentially. Not a good situation for her.
So how did they even get to this point?
Right.
Like, I mean, to really get what's going on here, we have to, like, rewind a bit.
Yeah.
And look at the history between Duterte and Marcos.
Yeah, they didn't exactly, like, start out as enemies, did they?
No, they were running mates, like we said.
Yeah.
But then things went south. Fast.
Definitely. And very publicly, too. Duterte quit her cabinet position and just went off, accusing Marcos and his allies of corruption and this whole political persecution thing. She even said Marcos was directly involved in some pretty shady stuff, like using his power to funnel contracts to his, his buddies.
So this isn't just some policy disagreement then. This is personal.
Totally. And to top it all off, you have the recent detention of Duterte's chief of staff, Zuleika Lopez.
Oh, right. The House of Representatives thing.
That was a big deal.
They accused her of what? Obstructing a congressional inquiry?
Yeah. And there was even talk about, like, throwing her in prison.
Okay, so I can see how that would push Duterte over the edge.
Oh, yeah, she was furious. She's been really vocal about defending Lopez and saying that this whole thing is just Marcos and his allies trying to shut her up.
And she's gone after Marcos pretty hard, too.
Yeah, calling him incompetent and a liar. I mean, there's a lot of anger there, a lot of resentment.
So let's go back to that whole assassination threat thing. What do you think? Was she being serious? Was it a way to just gain some political points? Or was it like a desperate cry for help?
It's really hard to say. Some people think it was just a calculated move to pressure Marcos and try to make people sympathize with her. But then other analysts see it as, like, a sign that she's desperate. A cry for help because she feels like she's trapped.
Yeah.
But no matter what her reason was, it's definitely escalated things.
And now the military's even gotten involved.
Right. General Romeo Bronner, the Chief of Staff of the Armed Forces, he came out and said the military will stay neutral and that they're committed to upholding democratic principles.
So they're basically trying to make sure this whole thing doesn't, like, explode.
Exactly.
But it makes you wonder about the lasting impact this is all going to have on the Philippines.
For sure.
I mean, this isn't just a war of words.
Right.
It's a power struggle.
With some pretty big potential consequences for the Filipino people.
Exactly. And to really get into those consequences, we need to go even further back.
Yeah.
And look at the history of these two families.
That's where things get even more interesting, in my opinion.
Okay, so let's get into it.
This feud isn't just about Sara Duterte and Ferdinand Marcos Jr. It's about decades of rivalry, shifting alliances, and, well, the legacies of two families that have shaped the Philippines in some pretty major ways.
Yeah, it does feel like this has been building for a while.
Right.
Some kind of political, I don't know, drama with deep roots. Like most people know about, Sara Duterte's father, Rodrigo Duterte.
Right, the former president.
Yeah, but what about the whole family dynamics with the Marcoses? How does that factor into all of this?
Yeah, you're right. It's not just a clash of personalities.
Right.
The clash of, you could say, legacies.
Legacies.
Rodrigo Duterte, as you said, was he was a pretty controversial president. known for his war on drugs, which was brutal, to say the least.
Yeah.
He had this strongman image, and a lot of people loved him for it.
Oh, yeah, he was super popular.
But the way he did things, well, let's just say, it got a lot of attention from the international community.
Not the good kind of attention either.
Not really, no.
I remember all the reports about extrajudicial killings and stuff. Wasn't the International Criminal Court even looking into it all?
Oh, yeah, definitely. That was a really dark time for the Philippines.
Yeah.
And even though both Rodrigo Duterte and Ferdinand Marcos Jr., they both come from this world of Philippine politics.
Right.
Their relationship was never that simple.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it was complicated.
Okay, so they were allies sometimes.
Sometimes, but then other times it was pure tension.
So they were kind of frenemies?
Yeah, you could say that.
Okay.
I think they both understood, each other's power and influence.
Right.
But they also saw each other as competition, potential rivals.
So this bad blood between their kids now, could that be like leftover stuff from that rivalry?
Oh, I think it definitely plays a part. Family legacies and these political rivalries, they go way back in the Philippines.
Wow.
Those names, Marcos, Duterte, they mean something. They represent different groups, different ideas about how the country should be run.
It's almost like we're talking about like political dynasties.
Yeah. It's kind of like royalty or something.
Interesting.
And it's not just about the fathers either. Sara Duterte, she's made her own way in politics too.
Right.
She was the mayor of Davao City, the same city her father was mayor of before he became president.
Oh, wow. That's interesting.
And she got a reputation for being tough,
Yeah.
decisive.
So she's kind of like her dad, personality-wise.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Okay.
And that's why, this whole thing with her and Marcos is so intense.
Right. They're both strong personalities.
Exactly. You got these two people, both used to being in charge, now locked in this pretty nasty fight.
And it's shaking things up.
Definitely. It's shaking up Philippine politics in a big way.
This isn't just, a family squabble, though.
Right.
I mean, what does all of this mean for the Philippines in general?
Well, there's some pretty big implications here.
Like what?
It's causing a lot of instability and uncertainty at the highest levels of government. It makes people question their trust in democratic institutions.
Yes, I can see that.
And it's also a distraction.
From what?
From the real issues the country's facing.
Right.
Poverty, inequality, corruption, even territorial disputes with other countries.
Oh, wow.
All that's getting overshadowed by this political drama.
So it's like the whole country is kind of on hold, waiting to see what happens next.
Yeah, pretty much.
Is there any way out of this? Can they just, make up?
It's hard to say. It could get worse. Deeper divisions, more polarization in society.
Oh, man.
It could even lead to protests, counter-protests, maybe even violence.
That would be terrible.
It'd be devastating for the country.
So is there any hope for things to get better?
There's always hope. Maybe this will be the wake-up call they need.
Duterte and Marcos.
Yeah, maybe this will make them think about what's really important.
And put the country first.
Exactly. Start thinking about the needs of the nation, not just their own personal ambitions. We could see some real dialogue, maybe some compromises.
So they could actually start working together.
Yeah, and focus on solving those big challenges we talked about. They could work on things like poverty, inequality, corruption. It could even lead to stronger democratic institutions.
Okay, so that's a much more positive outlook. But even if things calm down, this whole thing's really brought some issues to the surface, hasn't it?
It really has.
It makes you think about the role of these political dynasties and how fragile democracy can be and how these personal feuds can just derail a whole country.
Yeah, it's a lot to think about.
So what does all this mean for the future of Philippine politics?
I think it means the stakes are really, really high right now. What Duterte and Marcos do next, it's going to have a huge impact on the country. This is a reminder that power comes with responsibility, especially in a democracy.
And it shows how important it is for people to be informed.
Yes.
And to hold their leaders accountable.
Absolutely. They need to demand transparency and push for a system that works for everyone, not just the powerful people at the top.
This has been a pretty crazy deep dive, hasn't it?
It has.
We've talked about so much, the history, the rivalries, the accusations. It's a reminder that even today, these power struggles and personal vendettas, they can really change the course of a nation.
It can.
So we've looked at like all the backstory, the political stuff, the accusations. It feels like, I don't know, a turning point for Philippine politics. But what happens now? What could happen from here?
That's the big question, right? I mean, one thing that could happen is this whole feud just gets worse. Yeah, it could push the Philippines into a real crisis. Imagine, like, even more division, the rhetoric getting even more heated, maybe even protests in the streets turning violent. That'd be really bad for the country, you know? It would make things unstable and scare off anyone who might want to invest there.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's pretty grim. And it could definitely happen, especially with all the anger and stuff we're seeing. But could this be a chance for, for good things to happen?
It's possible. Sometimes it takes something like this, a real shock, to make people rethink things. Maybe this whole thing will make Duterte and Marcos step back and, reconsider what they're doing.
Right.
Maybe they'll start putting the country first.
So maybe this could be the start of a real conversation between them.
Yeah, a chance to find some common ground, to work together on the problems the Philippines is facing.
Like all those issues we talked about before.
It's exactly. Poverty, inequality, corruption, all of it. We could see them working together to actually make some real changes, some reforms. And it could even mean stronger democratic institutions.
Yeah.
More transparency, accountability, all that good stuff.
That would be amazing.
It would.
But even if things settle down, I mean, this whole thing has revealed some real problems, right?
Oh, for sure.
Like how much power these political families have and how fragile democracy can be and how these personal fights can just mess everything up.
Yeah, it makes you think.
What does all this mean for the future of politics in the Philippines?
It tells us that the stakes are really high. The decisions that Duterte and Marcos make over the next few weeks, the next few months, they're going to have a huge impact on the whole country.
So it's a big deal.
It's a really big deal. It's a reminder that power comes with a lot of responsibility, especially in a democracy.
And it shows how important it is for people to pay attention.
Yes.
And to hold their leaders accountable.
Absolutely. People need to demand transparency and push for a system that works for everyone, not just the people in power.
This has been a wild deep dive, hasn't it?
It really has.
We've learned about all the history, the bad blood, the political maneuvering. It shows us that even today, these power struggles and personal fights can really affect a whole country.
They can. And they do.
It's a reminder that things can change, but it takes work. It takes people demanding better from their leaders and working together to build a better future. That's something to think about, isn't it?
It is.
Well, that wraps up our deep dive into the drama unfolding in the Philippines.
Thanks for joining us.
We hope this has given you a better understanding of what's going on, and hopefully it's giving you some things to think about. Stay curious and stay engaged, everyone. Until next time.